Hey, while we're on that word, automatology, that is you can call it a science. It's not really science of naming things. So, like, a popular cultural example and a religious example would be Adam when he named the creatures in the Bible, but basically just ascribing names to things. Coming up with names is it's a fancy way of saying that. Happens all the time in fiction. In fact, we got some really, really good examples of it on the SCP Wiki. Blaggeroth is not one. I'm not saying maybe that was created previously. I don't know, but one of the ones that I always point to as a great example of automatology on the SCP Wiki is Anatashisha. Okay, the SCP-3000 Serpent. Great name. Great name. Excellent. And that's what I do when I write my containment fiction articles. I do some sort of automatology, just in case you're wondering. I guess I'm plugging myself now. Wow, look at me.
One that I have
Such a hypocrite.
in my notes.
Let's keep going.
What the fuck next to?
At least I can know when I'm doing it and cut it off. Let's go.
Scientist. Which is fine, right? I mean, the Church of Satan is like an interesting thing. Except for until if you pay attention to anything in the real world, where the Church of Satan is like Nazi adjacent.
Wow. So this guy just said if you're paying attention to anything in the real world, the Church of Satan is Nazi adjacent. All right, tell me that you don't know anything about the Church of Satan without telling me that, because that's exactly what you just did. Shame on you. What an embarrassing thing to do, to spout things like that you clearly have no fucking clue what you're talking about. The Church of Satan is a floor show. It's theater. It's theatrics. Anyone who's ever been a part of it will tell you that. Not that I have myself. But it's a group of atheists. They don't really believe in Satan. And so I fail to see how you get from basically a diverse group of atheists whose only real quality in common that they're being grouped in by is that atheism, and then sort of an anti-nihilist, absurdist direction to take. Just being over the top for the sake of it. That's what the Church of Satan is. So, I mean, once again, this guy basically has the freedom to say whatever he disagrees with is a Nazi, right? But if I call him a fucking idiot, suddenly I'm Mr. Bad Guy. So, I mean, what's worse, being an idiot or Nazi? I think probably being a Nazi is worse than being a fucking idiot. Let's let this guy talk himself into more idiocy.
They're a very conservative, almost right-wing organization.
Wow. Is this guy done? Basically, anything that this guy doesn't know anything about is covered in this black, tarry liquid that is excreted from his mouth or brain. It's a lot like a squid who basically it's some form in the ocean that it can't really make out because its eyesight maybe isn't very good, and the lighting perhaps isn't very good in the ocean where it is, and so it basically just shits out some ink in its direction, and that ink is in this case made up of terms like right wing, Nazi, stuff like that. He has no fucking clue what he's talking about. It's really sad that somebody would be okay with saying that. Like, he didn't go back and edit this out. He didn't go back and check his work. Just him saying it is good enough. I doubt he even knows any. I know at least one person who was in the Church of Satan before. I've listened to what they have to say about it. Have you? What are you doing? Reading the ADL website? Are you letting Google tell you that the Church of Satan is right wing? What a fucking moron! Give me a break.
I think their last name is LeVay in one of those Cleft Tales.
This is the kind of idiocy that no one else is going to recognize. It just, Nazis.
The Church of Satan.
Satan Nazis.
Wow. Was not a pleasant man. I mean, he endorsed eugenics. Bad person.
But you got to get to the fun part that's on the.
Yeah, eugenics is dumb and bad. Let me tell you why. I'm not being sarcastic. It is bad. And dumb. It's because, eugenics is essentially the artificial culling of a section of possible genetic diversity based on the assumption that you have the most superior genes. when that can't actually be the case, because the most superior genes is a matter of fitness, biological fitness, and biological fitness is determined by the environment. So if you have a changing environment, which is what we have, if you have an environment that you cannot control, which is what we have as humans, then it's kind of dumb to rob yourself of genetic diversity that might come in handy later, or at least, spawn something creative or good in differing environments. You essentially pigeonhole yourself and very unstrategically put all of your eggs in one basket when you are a proponent of eugenics. Just a terrible, terrible idea. And that might be different if you can control the environment, right? If you had total control of the environment and it wasn't going to change and you could be assured that it wasn't going to change, then maybe it would be a good idea, right? But even then, probably not very smart. It's like investing all of your stock in just a one or something like that. Like, you need a diversity, you need a portfolio, which honestly, in a very, very less dramatic and only highly rhetorical and metaphorical sense, I think, is what the SCP is doing. They basically have more of an ability to control their environment. That's what the staff have been doing for years and years and years, really over the last decade or so. They've been just getting the SCP Wiki in a death grip of their environmental control. And so that's why you see a sort of eugenics attitude sort of emerging from the SCP Wiki, where basically if you don't have these particular political beliefs, or if you say this, or if you aren't quite the Aryans, quote-unquote, sort of style of person there, then you're essentially banned just because you're different. So that's really a spiritual form of eugenics, in my opinion.
I don't have the quote in front of me.
Oh my god! Okay.
And if you just heard me say that and you're aghast that I referred to the SCP Wiki as somewhat involving an Aryan mentality, then you should be equally upset about this guy just calling people Nazis all over the place. This is what I'm talking about, where they can say things that we can't, right? The rules are different for them. They don't have to apply, and they don't have to pass their own purity tests. So go fuck yourself.
Well, okay, believe
fucking Nazi.
The human self-will over all false gods, and are hostile to any and all deities. If God exists, it is the duty of humankind to kill him.
I don't care if you call me a Nazi. I mean, it doesn't mean anything anymore.
If God exists, it is the duty of humankind to kill it.
I don't care. I mean, that doesn't mean
that would
anything.
Get me up in the morning. That job.
I mean,
it's been turned into a meaningless term. I mean, it doesn't. You might as well be calling me Blaggeroth.
But they are more progressive, in my opinion.
I am contractually obligated in every article I write to mention the words achromatic abatement. Grigori is contractually obligated in each podcast.
Yeah,
to say
so
the word sarcasm.
You can tell he practiced these words prior. It's almost like, dang, look at that! I got a bump on my arm. It's almost like when you were a kid, you're like the second grade, and you were able to impress your friends because you could say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious or anti-disestablishmentarianism. And even a little later when you got into things like the sarcoplasmic reticulum, you can just throw out all these polysyllabic words, and so that means you're really smart and cool and shit.
Which is so funny because I have this reputation for being one of the sarcasm authors, and less than 1/10 of the shit I've made has even mentioned that word.
Yeah, you've got half a dozen things with sarcasm.
Right. It's and a couple of them just mention it.
So if you had, let's say, 65% or 70% of your articles about one thing, would you be fairly called an author of that way of thinking? I think the answer is yes. And the reason I say that is because ding, 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 Neo-Lol Foundation, right? That article is now up on the Confic Wiki. Go check it out. But, Rounder House, probably 65%, I would take a guess. I'll be highly conservative in my estimate and say that it's actually 50%. 50% of Rounder House's stuff is squarely pegged into the Neo-Lol Foundation style. So certainly we could maybe categorize Rounder House as a Neo-Lol Foundation author if this guy can be categorized as a sarkic article dude with only 12 articles in that category.
Offhand thing. It has nothing to do with the article.
10 more minutes.
Well, anyway.
Their time.
I thought it was really interesting that
how we doing?
They actually break
30
down
minutes, not bad.
Divisions of the GOC, and they have three main divisions other than their command structure, where one of them is physics, and the other is
son of a gun,
and the last one is Ptolemy, 3 Ps. And physics is it's the action arm. It's equivalent to United Nations peacekeeping forces.
Should probably listen to this on double speed, don't you think?
Investigation and neutralization.
Let's see here, because there's just a lot of dead time here. Playback speed. Let's check it out.
They are made up of like assessment and strike teams.
1.25 is good.
Investigators, and they have essentially teams that are literally what you imagine when you talk about the GOC. They're just a bunch of soldiers.
You might want to listen to this back in 1.25.
Yes.
I'm not sure of the math off the top of my head fractionally, but if you listen to this video back at 1.25 and I was listening to another video back at 1.25, would that be 1.5 for them? Is it additive? Is it just a sum?
And some of the Tails / SCPs that deal with the GOC have them in like mecha armor, like power armor.
Yep.
Stuff, like
Once again, Hogwarts, Gundam Wing. Let's just see what we can throw in here.
About having to maybe face the GOC in the field, it sounds like they're coming at you with mechs and shit.
Just like a poor man's version of Hogwarts and a poor man's version of Gundam Wing, or Kaiju, whatever. Pacific Rim, whatever you want to call it.
Anime. It's a very anime thing.
Yeah, well, I got my name from my username in Mech Warrior too. So.
Oh, nice.
Great game. Wow, that sends me back.
Really old.
Yeah,
Hellcat is pretty fucking cool.
I have a lot of time left.
Oh no, we're gonna die any second. Like maybe during this podcast.
Yeah, that could be fun. Keep listening. I don't know who's gonna upload it, but.
Yeah, no, that'll probably just be for our families, I guess.
What?
So the last division is Psyche, which is like at first you read Psyche and you go, oh, these are probably psychics and spies, and it's like, no, it's not. This is the diplomacy arm. And the idea that the
oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's really cool. That's really clever and cool.
Soldier boys
Diplomacy is just psychology. It's just a chess game.
It's like fascinating to me, which I don't know if enough. A lot of things are clearly.
Which once again brings me back to my main point, which is that we're playing chess, but these other people don't have to play by any chess rules in our diplomacy. So the game is over with. You can't actually play the game when the other person is not actually playing by the rules, can you?
Paranormal community and maintaining peace between humanity and the occult powers. So right there in their fucking motto, or whatever their mission, it's pretty clear they're not here to destroy everything anomalous.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really cool because then they break down into the UN terminology because they have special observers and ambassadors, just like the UN. And so then I feel like we swing back into the legitimacy because if they are, funding and operating UN ambassadors and special observers the way that the IRL UN does, only to the paranormal community, well then all of a sudden I can.
Does the UN still use FNP 90s?
In terms of legality? I don't know. I would
Interesting
like to
gun.
I think I probably want to write something about
totally
that.
3D printable, by the way.
The idea of diplomacy being a focus because we have this is such a wide world with so many different organizations and nations.
Remember the Are We Cool Yet arms thing?
That it is kind of
They had done a CZ Scorpion and they ended up doing a P90. I'm not saying it's because I recommended it, but I was like, hey, you should do a P90 because it's all polymer. The whole thing is polymer. There's like 2 or 3 pieces of metal in there. Y'all should do it. And they did it. Was it me? Doubt it. But I'm going to think that way just because I can.
So, I don't know. A lot of listeners probably are not aware, but we and some of the other authors behind 6500 and some other authors that weren't involved have launched a canon that continues from Inevitable. And if you know anything about Neville, you know that there's a
patting themselves in the back the same way that a little toddler would be patted on the back by their parents to burp, to get burped.
Which is right in the middle now, where the Foundation decides whether or not they're going to dissolve. And
oh wow, path, how trite!
No, they're going to keep going as they have, and in one path they decide yes they will.
Yikes, not good.
We are telling the stories.
What was the 6,000 contest? It was Nature.
Which is about this new organization that
I was listening to the DJ Cactus interview on Creative Stuff podcast, and he couldn't remember what the theme for the 6,000 contest was that he entered, and I think won second place in.
So they've got
yikes, and they didn't go back and correct it either.
Their five-fold mission
post edit.
Survival.
The GOC.
That's right.
Strange.
Not Vanguard. The GOC.
That's right. Fuck Vanguard. I mean, it's good, but forget about it for now. The survival.
Go read our stuff, but don't think about it.
Once again, there it is.
That's right. Open up a tab with our stuff.
Shills and self-pats.
So the
getting hard to breathe.
Survival, concealment, protection.
Just so claustrophobic. There's so many shills and self-pats going on in here.
The fifth one is education.
I feel like I'm going to choke on one.
Because, again, it's just so chock full of contradictions in the best ways.
We have to explain these to people, but we also have to keep it secret and don't tell anyone.
Right. Yeah, so, it's pretty clear that they are covert like the Foundation. This is a global conspiracy.
Silly me. I've gone, how long? 35 minutes without this.
Because, we just said, they have connections to all these paranormal organizations and communities. Whereas the Foundation does care, but is kind of about, kind of less concerned with how anyone thinks about them.
The Foundation cares because you do.
In general, they think they know best, and they're not going to worry about the outside perspective.
Yep.
Although that is not true in many articles, but, as we talked about before, there's no canon, blah, 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 blah.
So they say.
Yeah, there actually is a canon.
Survival.
Okay. Shout out to Non-Canon, a podcast coming up. I'm excited to hear about that, Dr. Pearson. There actually is a canon, and let's go with the Law Foundation. If we just went in a total Law Foundation direction, just like everything was just super Law Foundation, and at some point you're gonna step on the toes of the actual rules of the SCP Wiki universe, and that's at that moment you've hit what canon is, when you're not allowed to get away with things. I remember writing an article when I was first on the SCP Wiki, and it was some stupid article. It wasn't very good, but someone commented and was like, "Hey, you can't write that," and I'm downvoting your article because, and this was like a popular author, it was like somebody who was very well established. He was like, "You can't write that because it makes the Foundation look stupid, because it makes the Foundation look incompetent." One thing that we do here is we don't assume, we don't write the Foundation employees as idiots. Okay. And that was 2018. Look at what's going on now. Law Foundation is everywhere. And part of the Law Foundation is passing off the Foundation employees as utterly incompetent, right? And like remarkably stupid. That's everywhere now. So, I mean, where's that guy now? It's funny how that changes. But that's what I mean. There actually is a canon. If there wasn't, then people wouldn't be able to say things like that. The staff would say that it is forbidden, in the same way that they've said you can't vote down something like SCP-6500 for thinking that it's just a giant fucking mess and a spaghetti bowl of stringed shit.
Is global coalition shall hold the survival of the human race against all threats, paranormal, occult, paratemporal, as their highest mission. Concealment is, as the knowledge of the parathreats would result in mass panic and heavy casualties among the general population, the GOC shall conceal the existence of said parathreats. So, just like the Foundation,
what's worse, them talking about themselves all the time, or them talking about just like really dry stuff like this?
In pursuit of the first mission, individual human beings shall be protected whenever possible.
And here's a big transition from the SCP Foundation's philosophy towards other human beings.
Right, yeah. Although that first part of the sentence does say they are expendable if the survival of the human race is at stake.
So the philosophy basically prioritizes the existence of anomalies?
But destruction is as the existence of
parathreats. Right? That doesn't make any sense. You got to take care of your own. Okay, sounds like the GOC has got that down. You got to take care of your own. The analogy is like if you're in a plane and suddenly you're going down, nosedive, free fall. The little bags pop down from the ceiling there. You're always told at the beginning of every flight, actually, to put the oxygen on yourself first. And they're not doing that because they're selfish people. They're doing that because in order to help someone else, you have to first be cognizant. You have to have oxygen going to your brain, particularly if you have a young one next to you. You got to prioritize yourself in that situation. You got to take care of your own first so that you can be equipped to help other people. So if the Foundation thinks that, humanity should die so that they can protect an anomaly or whatever, they got it wrong.
The survival of the human race, no unnecessary risks are being taken to ensure the survival of parathreats. So this
there's
is
no
the
canon,
primary difference, I think, between the Foundation and
if there's no canon, then how can you make these definitive comparisons between the GOC and the Foundation?
Erroneously thought.
I guess you have to assume some canon to do that, don't you?
Protecting the anomalies.
Non-canon.
If it's a threat to humanity, then we should fucking kill it.
They're not interested in developing that curio cabinet of anomalies that the Foundation is going for.
Right. Because the Foundation is very, very reticent to neutralize a threat. They would much more likely, they want to put them in a box.
It's kind of like
what's
Pokemon,
really interesting,
isn't
I think,
it?
is this fifth mission, which is education, because the GOC shall.
There's we got Hogwarts, we got Gundam Wing and the Pacific Rim, and we got Pokemon.
Maybe I'm just ignorant, but is not a strong enough, a focus of some of these stories, because they're not just interested in destroying or concealing the anomalies. They're also interested in understanding it, like the Foundation does. But it doesn't feel quite as Big Brother. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of these aspects that.
Yeah, I would say the SCP Wiki is pretty Big Brother-ish.
Go smash it up.
I'm talking about the fictional thing, but I'm also talking about the real thing.
So,
you know what I'm talking about.
Talk about some articles.
You guys know what I'm talking about. You got to watch what you say.
And other people have suggested.
People are watching. They got eyes and ears in the ground.
Which was
they got scouts everywhere. They got scouts in our Discord, the SCF, Society for Containment Fiction. Yeah, leak in the chats there. So once again, they don't play by those rules. You know, if somebody in the SCF took a screenshot of something that somebody said, and then sent it over to the SCP Wiki people, no one's gonna be like, oh, whoa, I can't say that. They didn't give consent for you to send that. You think they're gonna say that? No, are you dumb? Fuck. This is an asymmetrical field. That's why I'm here. Don't worry. We're going to write it out. Write it out. And write it out. No problem.
It's an SCP that has GOC annotations on it because it's describing an event that the Foundation and the GOC
are both
involved in. So the Foundation is writing the documentation that is explaining what happened
in this
incident. And what happened in this incident is some people opened up a crate that had a paraweapon in it, and the paraweapon started having some very deleterious effects on local reality. And
good word.
Lived in it.
Deleterious. I'm going to give him that one. Good word.
Sprout out with all kinds of really unpleasant reality-altering effects that cause most of them to die terribly and completely warped reality in the area.
Sounds like a spooky monster to me.
Describing what's going on, and they're saying, well, here's where we think the object came from, here's what it might have been, here's how it got opened, here's how it went wrong, and the GOC is auditing the file with little notes, and the little notes are all kind of like, that doesn't check out. The technical specifications for that don't make sense. That's not what we think happened. And they're just these tiny little poking hole moments.
Yeah. This is Rounder House's article. One of his non-Law Foundation articles. Which is nice. When Rounder House doesn't write Law Foundation or Neo-Law Foundation, it's good.
Bad group of interests people did this, and it's causing this huge problem. And you know,
unfortunately, he writes mostly Neo-Law Foundation, and it's just terrible.
Like Columbo arguing with the killer, where it's like,
so terrible.
Yeah, but and you get the point at the end that really the Foundation is telling a story as opposed to reporting what actually happened.
Right.
And it seems like they might know more about why things went wrong than they're telling.
It's amazing that the idea that the Foundation could be lying, you know, and leveraging its position to spread misinformation and disinformation is like a novel way to write a SCP article.
I did too, but it was just after I'd met him, so
interesting.
Things he felt free to ignore.
Okay.
Well, you know, and that's the thing about
he knows now that I get pissy if he ignores me, so he tries not to.
Yeah, nobody cares about it if you get pissy, Harry Blank.
Really shows like
you're like a little child.
Between the GOC and the Foundation. Very often the GOC is presented as like
just the solution to Harry Blank throwing a temper tantrum and getting pissy is just to pat him on the back until he burps.
Uncovered and some crazy weapon starts fucking up a small village. The GOC has a very different perspective about what should be done.
All right, so we're about at an hour. We're going to stop it there, and then we'll take this in 30-minute pieces. So appreciate it. We'll hit that, and I'm going to stop this at the exact same time for calibration purposes. This has been Lack of Lepers. See you next time.